again, if you understand how you generate frequencies, you understand what level of consciousness that you're at. Your timeless self equal your higher self. Yes, but that doesn't mean your awakened self, right? Because most people go, if you're in that spiritual realm, or if you're in your success realm, if you're in that spiritual mindset, you go, well, if I connect to my spirit, all is going to be well, right? Or if you're a scientist or that success mechanism, if I create success, all will be well. But that's not the case for several reasons. But the main reason is that at a physical or time level, time-bound level, you're thinking that you're creating the reality that you are. But in reality, you're not. So I'll try to simplify it. The experience that you are experiencing, including your body structure, your self-image, your illnesses, and all your body, right? Most people, again, put that outside. It's like, well, this just is, that it's a constant. It doesn't change, which is an error. Things change. Things are dynamic all the time. Again, you're a frequency. You're not solid objects, okay? And then furthermore, you think you're a constant here, and then your experiences are, well, changeable. It doesn't work that way, okay? So your timeless self does not mean an awakened self, right? Your timeless self, or your spirit, right? And we'll call it your timeless self or your pure presence, renders the experience that you're experiencing. So for example, if you have heart issues, diabetes, or whatever disease that you have, aging, okay, you're rendering that version from your spirit or your pure presence, your timeless self. You're rendering that image because it thinks that's the reality that you want to experience. It's a loop. So that loop gets created, just very quickly, that loop gets created by when you come into human form. Okay? Your human form, you have this identity right off the bat based on, say, family value structure, hereditary patterns, and all those things. Those filters are just created as you are, and then you add on your experiences. So that filter in itself is not you. So that's the filter that your, say, spirit or your timeless self renders or thinks that you want to experience here. Okay? What XI does is, one, helps you realize that what you're creating here is not anything physical. It's a representation of how you see yourself at your timeless being. Okay? Once we understand that, and again, understanding that is like, say, 80-90% of the solution right there. Once you understand that it's a higher level of consciousness that you're creating, it's not your thoughts, it's not psychology, it's not anything has to do anything with that. And this is where even, aging starts to change for you. The way you age, you don't have to look like your parents or anything like that. That's how deep of a change, because once you're awakened, again, once you understand, say, the blueprint on how you create your life here, you're not working on this physical aspect of who you are. You're working at a much higher level. And then that's when you go, wait a second. When you start to burrow in, or you start to go into, say, those files of your, say, timeless being, it's like, how did I get this meaning of love equals abuse? How did I get this meaning of the more I sacrifice, the more success I have? How did I get this meaning that I always have to, attract, say, people who are addictive that beat the shit out of me? Those are all patterns that you at a conscious level did not decide. You at a timeless level did not decide. If you had that awakening, you would never, ever, ever choose those experiences. And you might go, well, that's a learning experience. Well, true to the billions of people that have already experienced that. Okay? And again, that's another subject, again, beyond this, say, topic. But your timeless self, again, is rendering who and what you are and what your experiences are. So timeless self does not mean awakening, but understanding that your timeless self is creating the experience here, that's where you start to question, like, well, why am I creating this experience here? Why do my hips give out at 40? It's like, oh shit, that's my father's pattern, right? Or, why do we die at a certain age? Well, shit, that's my mom's pattern and all that. You start to understand, and then your spirit starts to awaken. And then that's where real evolution starts to take place. Because in the past, you're not really evolving. You're just like rendering or re-rendering the same recipe as society, as family and all that. So you start to awaken to go, shit, there's a higher potential. And then that's where you start to remove. And then the more you awaken, well, obviously what happens is the more you realize that this higher version is creating it, and it's like fire. You light it, and it just like, it's like tinder. It just burns rapidly, because you want to be your best possible self. Okay, and then your life experiences, say, change here. So this question is, what do frequencies have to do with my near-death experience? Well, it's got to do everything with it, because we take for granted a lot of things in our life. We take for granted that, well, gravity just works the way it does, because we're born into gravity, right? We're born into how electromagnetism works. We're born into how your cell structures work, how your hormones work, and we just take that as, well, granted, right? So we all learn that gravity has, and this is just one example, that gravity has an effect of us, but we don't cognitively, say, decide that I'm going to learn about gravity so I can have a better life. We just fall into it. Okay? Say maybe a better analogy is that many people are, say, got forced to learn computers. Because what did they want to do? They had a passion or desire to go shopping or check out social media or whatever. If we didn't, nobody would take the trouble or the time to learn about computers, because it's like, well, what would we do, right? So society as a whole, literally, what they do is they force themselves to a level so they can pleasure themselves. Simple as that. So what does that have to do with frequencies? Well, XI, exponential intelligence, and as after my near-death experiences, it forced me to go back to the basics of how we create ourselves here. Right? That's why there's a lot of science. There's a lot of, say, quantum mechanics in XI and exponential intelligence, and a lot of the quantum mechanics problems that can't be figured out can be figured out through XI, or I could explain those, by the way, on how gravity really works, on how time and space really work, and all that stuff. And I'm not, say, knocking the other, say, solutions down, but it fills in the gaps and holes on how all that stuff works. But back to the question, is that the base level on how this reality works is that, again, if you understand how you generate frequencies, you understand what level of consciousness that you're at. Okay? So it's all about the states of consciousness. So you can see, like, some people, they're down and out and all that stuff. Or some people so those are all frequencies generated by you. Okay, if you can, say, categorize them, you'll understand, say, the level or where they're coming from or how they're vibing, right? And then once you understand that, you can start to manipulate or materialize certain levels of frequencies. So instead of going, well, I need X amount of money to be happy, which doesn't make you happy, or if I met this person, I'll be happy, which doesn't make you happy, what you're really asking is, well, what frequency do I have to resonate at to be happy in a relationship? So that's a better question for you to understand frequencies, right? So what frequencies do I have to generate myself, body-wise? Your personal frequency signature has to change for you to be, say, happy or complete. So that's why it's so important. So once you understand the logistics or the science behind frequencies, well, you can become a master. Say, like me, I can generate any frequency for you. And then it's your choice to hold on to that frequency, right? Through succession or practice. Simple as that. By the way, that's how I changed people's lives. So again, if you wanted to, and I do that in group settings or individual settings, say you wanted to I don't know, experience, say, success at its highest order, there's a frequency for that. There's a frequency for being homeless. There's a frequency for being euphoric in love. There's a frequency for, say, spiritual orgasms. There's frequencies for everything. There's a frequency for, say, the texture of your hair. Okay? Everything, again, is a frequency, and then it breaks down and it's like, whoa, that's really crazy, because now you're not looking at the end product, you're looking at how to create, say, that end product or the experience of your life. How do I define, or how do you rise to different levels of consciousness? Well, first we have to understand what consciousness is. It's a good starting point. And again, consciousness is simply the global setting that you exist in. Okay, so basically, you have you're in a room, okay, and you can only do certain things in this room, and then whatever you create, there's Lego blocks in this room, and then whatever you create in this room, okay, is created of those Lego blocks. So if those Lego blocks, say, are yellow, okay, and say made of sacrifice, okay? There's actually, say, a material or frequency that's made of sacrifice, okay? And there's usually like there's more than two, 3 components, say, in a consciousness. But just for this example, it's made out of sacrifice, control, and say, lack, okay? So you can create anything that you want in this consciousness, and that might sound very similar or familiar to you, right? Because that's the consciousness that most people exist in. Let's call it a 0-level consciousness, okay? And there's a reason why it's a 0-level consciousness, by the way. But think of it. So a consciousness is basically a global setting on how you can create yourself here, or what you can experience here, okay? So, for example, just to give you another analogy, and then we'll go back to the old one. So consciousness is you have an Android phone, okay? That Android phone works in a specific way. It has certain system requirements for you to adapt, say, the app that you're going to use on your Android phone, or a Microsoft phone, or an Apple phone, or whatever it might be. Again, that app, say, is success. Okay, that app, you want to have an app for success that you want to utilize. So in this situation, again, you want to create success. Okay, so we'll take it away from that analogy to the house analogy with Lego blocks. Okay, so you want to create success, but the only materials or your constraints are, it has to adapt to the consciousness or the global setting of that program. So what that means is that you have to create success using control, lack, and sacrifice. Okay? So no matter what you do, no matter what problems you try to solve, it always has those main ingredients in it, because that's the consciousness or the global setting that you exist in. Okay? That's why love, or even love affairs, never work out. That's why success, if you're in this consciousness, never works out. That's why health in this consciousness never works out. Just think of it. In this consciousness, we always have to give up something for something. Why is that? Okay? Why can't you just be happy, as most people go? Because you're in that consciousness. So what do? You elevate yourself to a higher level. What that means is that in space-time, it means that it resonates, the consciousness resonates at a higher frequency. Okay? The higher you go, the higher the frequency. Simple as that. The higher the frequency, the less bullshit hangs on to you. Right? Just to put it in science terms. Right? That's actually a science term, by the way. Right? The higher the frequency, the less garbage can hang on to you. Simple as that. And you resonate at a pure. So just like, if you had a tuning fork that was crusted over, you can literally vibrate that tuning fork at such a high frequency that the rust and whatever that is on that tuning fork removes itself. Okay? Simple as that. So at the lower levels of frequency, or that levels of consciousness, at the lower levels of consciousness, there's a lot of trash and a lot of garbage that can, say, get stuck onto you, right? Because you're resonating at a low frequency. You have a lot of problems at the lower frequency. There are a ton of possibilities on how you can fuck up at this lower frequency. Simple as that. And there are a ton of possibilities how you can, say, become wealthy and happy and all that stuff, but still it'll never be complete because you're burdened or you're stained, say, with whatever that is on you, because you exist in this consciousness. Another way of putting it is that you walk into, a bar, back in the day, and it was smoke filled. No matter how or what you do, right? No matter how beautiful the clothes that you, say, wear coming out of that bar, it's still smoke filled. It still has that stench of that consciousness. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So the higher you go, the less and less, say, possibilities of distortion that you have. Okay, and this is at a deeper level, or science is, if you think about it, it's like science always goes, well, there's always an exception to the rule, right? That's true, because you're not at the top level consciousness where there's no exceptions to the rule. Okay, and if you don't believe me, you look at nature; it's consistent, right? The laws of physics is consistent, so it's a high level consciousness. But we're trying to, say, resolve or understand physics, laws of nature, laws of love, laws of human at a lower, a zero level consciousness. And that's why I will never understand it, because even our, say, mechanisms we measure science through, for example, is filtered through, again, the global setting. So how do you go to the different level of consciousness? Well, spatial referencing is one, and I talked about that in a podcast. It's all about you understanding the global setting that you're working with. Okay, and then once you understand that, the next step is to go, well, what's the next level up? Okay, what I do, or what Xponential Intelligence, through Meta Healings, Mass on Sundays, and the various products that we have, is basically, you don't have to understand the consciousness that you're in. So XI basically pinpoints the consciousness that you're in, okay, or the garbage that you're resonating at, and basically pushes you into the highest level of consciousness that I can put you in. And then when you can do that, you start to resonate very differently, okay? And then what happens when you go to that next level of consciousness, or several levels of consciousness up, you look down upon yourself and you go, wait a second, I don't resonate with that anymore. I don't resonate with that person anymore. I don't resonate with that habit or addiction or whatever anymore. You didn't solve a problem. I mean, you did, but in a very different way. If that makes sense. You just basically made that problem disappear. So if you say you have addictions, which is part of, say, this global setting here, right? If you go to a certain level of consciousness where addictions don't exist, you can't even access your addictive pattern. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't, render it. So that's the key. And that's how XI, say, gets rid of addictions in this case. By the way, we're doing an addiction series coming up using these strategies. Okay? So how do you increase levels of consciousness? It's not by, well, I don't want to say it's not by prayer, it's not by motivation or anything like that, but it's mostly by your awareness of where you are and how. It's about you understanding the global settings of your, say, environment. And once you understand the mechanics of that, you raise yourself to the next level. And then you understand the mechanics of that level, and then you raise to the next level, right? And it keeps going higher and higher and higher.